Imagine waking up tomorrow and the internet is simply gone. No Google, no social media, no online banking, just nothing. What if the single technology upon which modern life depends were to suddenly vanish? This isn't just a matter of inconvenience, it's a potential catastrophe. Hospitals would lose patient data, stock markets would crash from failed transactions, and global supply chains would grind to a halt. We've built our entire world on a foundation of digital quicksand, and its apparent permanence is a dangerous illusion. The truth is, despite its stability, the internet is a fragile system riddled with vulnerabilities. Aging infrastructure, the looming threat of cyber warfare, and escalating geopolitical instability all pose a significant risk. Consider this. Major internet outages have already been caused by something as simple as cable cuts and DDoS attacks. The system is not as robust as we assume. And it's not just the technology itself, it's our dependence on it. The internet has become the backbone of modern life, permeating every facet of our existence. It's not just a tool, it's the bedrock of our economics, communication, governance, and even our personal identities. Power grids, water systems, and transportation networks all rely on the internet for monitoring and control. What happens when that control is lost? On a personal level, consider the implications. How would you cope without access to instant information, social connections, or online services? How would you contact loved ones in an emergency? Businesses unable to process transactions, governments unable to coordinate emergency responses. The impact would be felt across every sector of society. Furthermore, what becomes of our digital legacy? What happens to your photos, your social media profiles, your online banking accounts if the internet simply ceases to exist? The implications extend far beyond mere convenience. They strike at the heart of our digital existence and challenge our assumptions about what lasts. This raises fundamental questions about the psychological impact of technological dependence and the long-term effects of living in an age defined by digital impermanence. The internet, initially conceived as a decentralized network designed for resilience, has morphed into a centralized structure dominated by a handful of powerful corporations and governments. Contrast the original vision of ARPANET with the current reality, where a few key players control the flow of information. This centralization amplifies its vulnerability. This brings us to the concept of digital existentialism. We increasingly construct our identities online through social media profiles, blogs, and various online interactions. But what happens to those identities, to that carefully curated sense of self, when the digital world vanishes? Are we facing a new form of existential dread, one where our very being is tethered to a system that is not guaranteed to last? As we move forward, we will explore three critical areas: the inherent fragility of the internet's infrastructure, the escalating dangers of centralized control, and the often overlooked psychological consequences of our digital dependence. We'll also consider a recurring cycle, one where humanity becomes overly reliant on a single technology, blind to its limitations, until a failure forces a reckoning. Perhaps the loss of the internet might not be entirely negative. Perhaps this shock could force a valuable reconnection with the physical world. So, is the internet's demise inevitable? What are the most likely causes? And are we being told the whole truth about the risks? Are there hidden vulnerabilities that could lead to a catastrophic failure? What if the internet as we know it is not the final form, but a stepping stone? Could the end of the internet as we know it be the beginning of something even more extraordinary, more resilient, and more human? So, is the internet's demise inevitable? What are the most likely causes? And are we being told the whole truth about the risks? Are there hidden vulnerabilities that could lead to a catastrophic failure? These are the questions that demand answers as we pull back the curtain on the internet's underbelly, starting with the often unseen physical infrastructure that makes it all possible. Consider the vast network of undersea cables that crisscross the ocean floor, carrying over 95% of global internet traffic. These cables, often no thicker than a garden hose, are the arteries of the digital world. But what if these arteries were severed? While buried deep beneath the waves, they are surprisingly vulnerable to natural disasters like earthquakes and tsunamis, as well as sabotage and accidental damage from ships. The 2006 Hengchen earthquake in Taiwan, for example, damaged multiple cables, causing widespread internet outages across Asia. Imagine a coordinated attack targeting several key cable locations. The economic and social disruption would be immense. How prepared are we for such a scenario, and what measures are in place to protect these vital links? Or are we simply putting all our faith into a system that could be crippled with a few well-placed strikes? Beyond the cables, the internet relies on massive data centers, often concentrated in specific geographic locations. Northern Virginia, for instance, is home to a significant percentage of the world's data, earning it the nickname Data Center Alley. These facilities require immense amounts of electricity to power servers and cooling systems. A disruption to the power grid, whether from a cyber attack, extreme weather event, or even a simple equipment failure, could bring down vast swathes of the internet. In 2020, a heat wave in Europe caused data centers to experience outages as cooling systems struggled to keep up. Are we over-reliant on these centralized hubs? And what steps can be taken to distribute data and processing power more evenly? What happens when the insatiable energy demands of these centers collide with a world struggling to transition to sustainable energy sources? Furthermore, the Internet's architecture contains single points of failure that could trigger widespread disruptions. Key routing nodes and domain name servers, DNS, are critical for directing traffic across the network. A successful attack on these points can render entire regions of the Internet inaccessible. The 2016 DDoS attack on Dyn, a major DNS provider, demonstrated the vulnerability, causing major websites like Twitter and Netflix to become unavailable. This reveals a central truth. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. The fragility of the Internet infrastructure reflects a broader pattern of technological hubris, where the focus on innovation overshadows the need for robust and resilient infrastructure. Like underfunded bridges that buckle after years of neglect, the infrastructure is aging, and that contributes to its problems. Resources are poured into new apps and features, while the underlying foundations are often overlooked. The consequences of this neglect are becoming increasingly apparent, and the Internet is facing a similar crisis. Will we learn from past mistakes and prioritize the security and stability of the Internet's core infrastructure? Or are we destined to repeat history with potentially catastrophic results? However, it's not just physical infrastructure that is fragile, but also the centralized control points that govern the flow of information. How does this centralization of power threaten the very foundations of a free and open Internet? And what are the potential consequences for freedom of expression and democratic discourse? Governments around the world are increasingly employing Internet censorship, including website blocking, content filtering, and surveillance. Countries like China have erected sophisticated Great Firewalls to control what their citizens can access online, suppressing dissent and limiting access to information. Even in democratic societies, governments are seeking greater control over online content, citing concerns about misinformation and hate speech. But who decides what constitutes misinformation or hate speech, and what safeguards are in place to prevent these powers from being abused? The very architecture of the Internet is changing, with governments seeking to exert greater control over its infrastructure and content. The concentration of power in the hands of a few large corporations, such as Google, Facebook, and Amazon, poses another significant threat. These companies control vast amounts of data and wield immense influence over online discourse. Social media algorithms can amplify certain voices and suppress others, shaping public opinion and contributing to political polarization. Targeted advertising can manipulate consumer behavior and reinforce existing biases? Are we truly free when our choices and opinions are shaped by algorithms designed to maximize profit? What are the long-term consequences of living in a world where a handful of corporations control the flow of information? The growing threat of cyber warfare adds another layer of complexity. State-sponsored hacking, disinformation campaigns, and attacks on critical infrastructure can destabilize societies and erode trust in the internet. Past cyber attacks on government agencies, power grids, and financial institutions have demonstrated the potential for widespread disruption. The conflict in Ukraine has seen an increase in cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure. The potential for future attacks to cause even greater damage is very real. As nations invest more in offensive cyber capabilities, are we on the brink of a new kind of digital conflict, one that could have devastating consequences for the internet and the world? The dangers of centralized control echo the concerns of past philosophers who warned about the potential for technology to shape human thought and behavior. Plato worried that the written word would destroy memory, while Marshall McLuhan argued that media are extensions of ourselves. Today, we see these concerns playing out in the digital realm. We struggle to remember basic facts without searching for them online, and social media platforms have become echo chambers, reinforcing existing beliefs and limiting exposure to diverse perspectives. Given these threats, what happens to our minds and our sense of self as the digital world increasingly mirrors and shapes our perceptions? How is our psychological dependence on the internet affecting our mental health, our relationships, and our ability to thrive in the physical world? Social media, for instance, has been linked to increased rates of anxiety, depression, and body image issues. The constant stream of curated content and the pressure to present a perfect online image can lead to feelings of inadequacy and low self-esteem. The addictive nature of social media, driven by dopamine and other neurotransmitters, keeps us hooked on a cycle of validation and comparison. The statistics are stark. Studies show a clear correlation between social media use and mental health problems, particularly among young people. Is this the price we pay for staying connected? And are we even aware of the subtle ways in which our minds are being manipulated? Are we sacrificing mental well-being for the sake of digital validation? Our identities and sense of self are increasingly tied to our online presences. We curate our profiles, seek validation through likes and followers, and fear missing out on the latest trends. The loss of a social media account, whether due to hacking or censorship, can feel like a personal crisis. The pressure to maintain a perfect online image can lead to a blurring of the lines between the real and virtual worlds. What happens when our digital identities become more important than our physical selves? And what are the consequences of living in a world where authenticity is sacrificed for online approval? Excessive internet use can also lead to a decline in real-world social interactions and community bonds. People who spend more time online tend to have fewer close friends and participate less in community activities. The ease of online communication can make us complacent, leading to a weakening of the social fabric that binds us together. This erosion of offline connections can lead to a sense of isolation and loneliness, even in a hyper-connected world. Can true connection be fostered through screens, or are we sacrificing genuine relationships for the illusion of intimacy? Perhaps the temporary or even permanent loss of the internet could force a valuable reconnection with physical reality, human relationships, and inner reflection. Henry David Thoreau, in his writings on the value of solitude and self-reliance, argued that we can find true wealth and fulfillment by simplifying our lives and connecting with nature. Disconnecting can feel like a burden. It can become a blessing. Those who have intentionally disconnected from the internet have experienced positive benefits, such as increased creativity, improved mental health, and stronger relationships. What if the death of the internet is not a catastrophe, but an opportunity to rediscover the joys of the physical world and the power of human connection? If the potential death of the internet is a crisis and an opportunity, what alternatives exist, and how can we build a more resilient and equitable digital future? What steps can we take to prepare for the possibility of a world without the internet? And how can we ensure that the next iteration of technology serves humanity rather than the other way around? Decentralized technologies, such as blockchain and distributed ledger technology, offer a promising path toward a more resilient and secure internet infrastructure. Blockchain can be used to create decentralized social media platforms, file storage systems, and DNS servers that are resistant to censorship and single points of failure. These technologies could distribute power more evenly across the network, reducing the influence of large corporations and governments. Could blockchain be the key to unlocking a more democratic and censorship-resistant internet, or are there limitations to its scalability and security? Community networks represent another promising solution. These are independent internet networks built and operated by local communities using mesh networking, fiber optic cables, or satellite connections. They provide affordable and reliable internet access to underserved areas and create more resilient communication systems in the face of natural disasters. Imagine a future where communities are empowered to control their own digital infrastructure, fostering local innovation and self-reliance. Developing offline skills, such as gardening, woodworking, and emergency preparedness, is crucial for increasing self-sufficiency and reducing dependence on technology. Learning traditional crafts and skills can provide a sense of personal fulfillment and empower us to meet our own needs in a crisis. Strengthening community connections through local events and mutual aid networks can create a safety net that extends beyond the digital realm. In a world that seems increasingly reliant on technology, is it time to rediscover the value of human ingenuity and self-reliance? Ultimately, we decide what comes next. We have agency over how technology is developed and used. By becoming more informed about the risks and vulnerabilities of the internet, by supporting decentralized technologies and community networks, and by prioritizing offline connections and skills, we can shape a future where technology empowers us rather than enslaves us. The internet will die soon, at least in its current form. How will we build the next iteration of technology and connection, and what kind of future will we create? The answer depends on our collective choices and actions, starting today. So, as we synthesize these points, we see the internet's fragility is due to infrastructure vulnerabilities like undersea cables, centralized control points subject to censorship, and the psychological costs of dependence manifested in social media addiction and erosion of real-world connections. But what if the internet's death isn't an end, but a catalyst? Crises often spur innovation. The internet's flaws, now glaringly apparent, are creating an imperative for change. We've seen this pattern before: technological dependence followed by disillusionment. Think of the telegraph, once revolutionary, now a historical footnote. Societies adapt. The potential demise of the current internet isn't a failure, but an evolutionary step towards a more sustainable technological ecosystem. Like biological evolution, the internet must adapt to better serve humanity. If it doesn't, something else will take its place. But this isn't preordained fate. We have a say in how that evolution will play out. This brings us to a broader understanding of human resilience in the face of technological change. Throughout history, societies have overcome wars, famines, and natural disasters. We possess the capacity to adapt and rebuild. Consider the individuals and communities actively building decentralized networks and developing alternative technologies. They recognize the issues and are proactively seeking solutions. The innovations occur because people recognized a problem and dedicated themselves to creating a solution. This points towards a future where technology serves humanity, not the other way around. Imagine a more equitable distribution of digital resources and a greater emphasis on human well-being. Technology could address poverty, inequality, and climate change, but only if we prioritize human needs over corporate profits. What transformations are possible if we embrace the potential demise of the current internet, rather than fearing it? Is it not an opportunity to create a more democratic and decentralized internet that is less vulnerable to censorship and control? Decentralized networks, community-based solutions, and prioritizing offline life are all threads leading toward a more resilient and equitable society. We can already see examples of successful decentralized projects and community initiatives making a positive impact. People intentionally disconnecting from the internet report increased creativity, improved mental health, and stronger relationships. It may not be a complete death, but a transformation into something new and better. The future isn't something that happens to us, it's something we make. By recognizing the power of individual and collective action, we can release the tension and shape the future. Take concrete steps, support decentralized technologies, join community initiatives, develop offline skills, and demand better from the companies and governments that shape the digital world. What new questions arise as we look beyond the internet? What other technologies will transform society in the coming years, and what will be their impact? We should consider the implications of a more human-centered approach to technology, a more equitable distribution of digital resources, and a more resilient and sustainable technological ecosystem. Imagine digital spaces that prioritize human connection, empathy, and well-being rather than addiction and polarization. Will we allow big tech to decide the future, or will we take back our agency? Join the conversation. Share your ideas, engage with online communities, and participate in building a better future. Explore the technologies, communities, and initiatives working toward a more positive vision. Research decentralized networks, promote offline living, and advocate for a human-centered approach. The internet may change, evolve, or even fade away, but our capacity for connection, innovation, and resilience will endure. The choice of what comes next is